there might be people who are, thinking, oh, well, getting together your generals, well, companies have all hands meeting all the time. We were talking about Apple. Apple has all hands meetings and everybody turns up. What's the difference here? Why is it so important that we have independent thinking, or what are the things that we should be looking for?
Well, look, I mean, the Secretary of Defense runs one of the largest, most complex organizations on Earth, an organization that is supposed to be devoting itself in real time, all the time, to the protection of the United States, to raising our readiness to be able to fight any foe that might seek to attack us, and to enable us to be able to use the military as a tool, diplomatic tool, to help us achieve our goals as a nation. This meeting helps achieve none of those things. Getting them all together in a room to listen to this frat boy and this draft dodger lecture them about a warrior ethos is it's ridiculous. It's low comedy. To talk about lethality, which Hegseth talks about all the time, to the leaders of the most powerful fighting force that has ever been assembled in the history of the world. Nobody doubts the lethality of the United States Department of Defense or the people within the Department of Defense. The only thing they know is we are weaker today than we were 9 months ago. Why are we weaker? Because we've weakened our alliances. Why are we weaker? Because we've strengthened our enemies. Why are we weaker? Because, as I said earlier, we've reduced the readiness of our forces, and we've gotten rid of a lot of qualified leaders who were super helpful in leading those forces. And so what Hegseth is doing here, consistent, by the way, with what he's done since he arrived in the office, is actually damaging the Department of Defense and actually weakening us. And, you can see this in everything else. He couldn't keep his staff together. There were scandals within his office. Nobody wants to work with him. It's ridiculous. And it's what you would get if you got a Fox TV news host to cosplay as the Secretary of Defense, which is what we've got going on now. We've got this guy, and he's like flexing like he probably did at 100 bars over the course of his life, saying, look at me, I'm a tough soldier, and not stop and say, as a Secretary of Defense is supposed to do, how do I make America stronger? How do I make America safer?
What do those generals and admirals that you speak to and those around them, what's their fear? What do they think is coming next, or what is going to happen as a result of this sort of meetings that could have been emails and cosplay and performative versions of governing?
Well, it's, essentially, as one guy said to me, we're essentially letting the air out of the tires, right? We are slowly making ourselves less capable, and we're doing it at a time when it's very clear that the civilian leadership upon which the military depends, the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, people who are holding senior positions within the defense community, people holding senior positions within the intelligence community, are among the least competent that we've ever had. I would add to that, by the way, that, one of the critical factors in maintaining our national security is, not surprisingly, the National Security Council. And, I've written 2 books on the National Security Council. I'm kind of a historian of the National Security Council. And I only say that to make this have a little more impact. We effectively don't have a National Security Council right now. It has been weakened to the weakest point since its creation in 1947 by the National Security Act of 1947. There is no National Security Advisor. The interim advisor is Marco Rubio, who obviously has 3 other jobs. And the president doesn't take advice. He doesn't read intelligence. He doesn't get briefed by experts prior to his meetings. He doesn't take experts with him on his way to his meetings. So we've already lobotomized the U.S. government. We've decapitated our own armed forces, and we are weakening them simultaneously. And this is a problem because the world is a dangerous place. Russia's being more aggressive along the borders of NATO. Israel is destabilizing significant parts of the Middle East. The Iranians are responding to an attack that we made that hurt them but has not stopped them in the development of their nuclear program. There are conflicts elsewhere in the world. China is eyeballing Taiwan as we speak, and people in the military consider that to be the most likely next major conflict. So, it's not like there's nothing to be focused on here, and that doesn't even begin to address, the fact that we're at a technological transformation point where AI and cyber and other kinds of new forms of war fighting, unmanned vehicles and so forth, autonomous unmanned vehicles, are on the horizon and need to be developed with real seriousness of purpose. So having a pep rally in Virginia led by a couple of nitwits is not what the United States government or the United States military needs right now.
Hi, I'm Hugh Dougherty. Let's be honest, news these days can feel like a maze of opinions, spin and half-truths. How do you know what's really happening? That's where Ground News comes in. It's an app and website that brings together articles on the same story from around the world, giving you the full picture. It also tells you where each publication leans politically, how reliable it is, and who owns it, all based on ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organisations. Basically, it helps you think critically about the news you read, and it's super easy to use. Take this Jimmy Kimmel story, for example. Ground News shows you the aggregate bias distribution of the sources of the story, and you can see if it has been covered by the left and the centre more than the right. You can also see each source's factuality and ownership data. And Ground News has other great tools like their blind spot feature that's designed to show readers which stories are being covered heavily by either left-leaning or right-leaning outlets, but are being ignored by the other side. Ground News shows you every angle so you can make up your own mind, not someone else's. Go to ground.news/beast for a better way to stay informed. Subscribe for 40% off the Vantage plan for unlimited access to worldwide news coverage using our link below. Ground News. See the story from every angle and stay informed with confidence. It's worth asking, or worth saying, of course, there was actually some sort of military deployment over the weekend, and it wasn't one that was abroad or about protecting NATO against Russia. It was 16 National Guard in Oregon were federalized to go and stand outside federal buildings in Portland. I mean, how does that go down at the top of the military and people who are concerned about national security?
Well, it doesn't. It's idiotic, right? The president put out a social media post on Truth Social in which he said he referred to war-torn Portland. Of course, immediately people on social media started posting pictures of like birds singing and flowers popping up and peaceful Portland, Portlandia,
Nightmare lines for brunch.
Right. And, it's very difficult to, get a donut because there's so many people out there getting a donut. But there's no war going on in Portland, right? But he said it was war-torn. And he said he had to send the troops in to fight Antifa. I point out now, as every time that I get an opportunity to, Antifa's not a thing. There is no Antifa. Okay? It's not a real organization. It is kind of sort of an ideology, sort of the ideology that we embraced when we fought the Nazis and the fascists in Italy. We were the leading anti-fascist. The leading anti-fascist of all time in America is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? But that aside, they're making up this imaginary enemy that is fighting us in an imaginary war, but he's deploying real troops to go fight it. And, he walked it back a little bit, but is this a distraction? Yes. Does it alienate people in Portland? Yes. Does it alienate the National Guard, who doesn't want to be, because what they end up doing is picking up garbage, as they're doing in Washington, D.C.
They do a daily update of how much garbage they have picked up and how many fences they have painted.
Right. And is this what people want to do? And by the way, the people in the National Guard, they have real jobs. They are called into National Guard service. They do not get paid a ton of money. They are sacrificing their time and energy to do ridiculous stuff because it makes the president feel like a real man. And, I understand it. He's an old guy and he wants to flex what used to be muscles and he wants people to treat him in a certain way. But this is not the way to do it. And one by one, he is alienating leaders in cities and states across America, people in his National Guard, and I hope citizens who realize that this kind of, playing at conflict helps nobody.